Good afternoon. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. I'm also representing the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin and our wonderful speakers in this partnership to bring you hope for the holidays, a chance to talk about the stress and learn ways to relieve the stress that may or may not be associated with the holidays. We're really excited today to have Jen Bluske. She's an occupational therapist and director of the Children's Therapy Network in Madison. She provides relationship-based therapy for children with autism spectrum disorders and believes in the power of movement strategies to help the whole family regulate together, which of course I love, Jen, because it just seems to me that if one person is unregulated, it's hard for everybody else to be regulated.
You got it.
Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate being able to talk to you all today. So we are going to just talk about moving, our sensations, feeling, regulating through this holiday season. So I'm going to just share my screen briefly here. So when we start talking about this time period, what I really like to think about is what are we looking at when we're looking at the holidays, right? So this is just a little slide just to kind of get us thinking about the holidays. So I feel like if we're really wanting to come up with strategies, we really want to start by first thinking about what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly of the holidays. What do the holidays mean to us and what do they bring, right? Does it mean having some time in nature? Does it mean having some family events that are traditions, like going sledding if there's ever snow? Does it mean baking? Does it mean seeing family members? I have this little angry green guy because, we're still in the world of COVID a little bit, right? So there's probably some shifts and changes that are still happening because of the pandemic that we've been in now for a while. Does the holidays mean a lack of your typical routine and the grind that we all go through on a daily basis? And so I would like to start by just really thinking about, what do the holidays encompass for you and for your family? What does that mean to you? It can mean many things. For some families, routine in life doesn't change that much during this holiday season or this end of the year time. For some families, it's pretty significantly different. So when we're really looking at our kids and our families, especially our kids on the autism spectrum, I always start by asking parents, what are our expectations, right? What are our expectations of what we wish for the holidays? Do we wish for creating some memories, right? Do we always go cut a tree down at the tree farm? Do we always attend a special event or a special musical event or something like that? Have we always participated in baking together? Is there some sort of memory that you're really trying to create with your family, or is it pretty unstructured that way? Are we hoping for rest and relaxation over the holidays? What are our expectations for that? As a parent, sometimes that's a tricky thing to think about, because there's all of these to-dos or should-dos that we think about for ourselves. If you've listened to any of the things I've talked about, I'm always talking about turning it back and having parents think about themselves a little bit during this time, because really, when we get to regulation and when we get to sensory and movement experiences, it really all comes through the parent and the relationship. And so I start by really having you think about yourselves and what we're setting up for our family system during this time. Are we hoping to complete projects? Are we planning to travel, right? Are we going across the country? This year there's a little more travel happening. Are we going to be at grandma and grandpa's house for an extended period of time? Are we having family come into our home? For all kids in school, right? School is off at the end of the holidays here, which is often an expectation enough and a shift enough. So that's another thing we like to really think about within this. I just saw a chat come from. And the other thing I like to say is canceled therapies, right? So sometimes therapies are canceled, which have a positive and negative, right? For kids, having a break is super important and very, very helpful. And it sometimes shows our routines. So as parents, or as caregivers, just take a minute and just think about kind of like what you're setting up for the holidays. What are the expectations and hopes? I also tend to talk about, my life experience quite a bit. My hopes and expectations are, I really wish that I could do some baking with my kids. I remember when my kids were young, I wanted to do some baking, and I'll reference, well, both my kids quite a bit, but my son is a sensory seeker. So every time we did baking, the entire kitchen was covered in everything because he's such a sensory seeker that everything was filthy. And so like I had to really work through that within my expectations and my hopes for the holidays for them. I also remember hoping and wishing we could have some downtime during our holidays. And for my kids, that didn't work. Having that unstructured downtime wasn't relaxing and regulating. And so we'll talk about that in strategies a little bit, but just really thinking about those expectations for yourselves.
So Jen, this is Tim. And so before we get going, I did notice that in our registration, I neglected to let you know, but we do have some individuals, some adults, young adults that are on the autism spectrum with us today as
Awesome.
well. So
All right.
if you could think about not just parents, but how about ourselves? How can we be, how does moving help us? And you've already been alluding to it, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. And so, if you're thinking about yourself in this scenario, what are your hopes and expectations for the holidays, right? Is there something that's really important for you or something that's stressing you out a little bit? That's what we're talking about today is just, I think that it's always wise to think through, to be planful about what we're hoping for within this holiday season. Okay, so this slide says, how do our kids and us feel successful with the holiday experience? But again, this is any relationship, right? This is any relationship. So if you're an adult thinking about, not because you don't have kids, think about the relationship either with your parents, your friends, your family. How do we help ourselves and our relationships feel good and safe during the holiday season? So really there's three kind of things I like to think about within this. The first one is regulated bodies. And so what I mean by regulated bodies is we want our systems, our bodies, to feel capable and organized to be able to engage within the environment that we're in and the relationships that we're in. So, for example, we do our best in sort of a middle state of arousal. So state of arousal is how alert we are to the environment. If there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of activity going on, and we're having a hard time staying calm or staying organized, or if you are a parent and your child is very, very revved up, maybe yelling or screaming, what does that do for us? If you're an adult who is in a really chaotic environment, and that's difficult for you to stay regulated in, our first job always, and then we really think about it in terms of the holidays because there's so much change that happens, is how we help ourselves be regulated. And we'll talk some sensory strategies for that. The second is safe and engaged relationships. So the best way to regulate ourselves is actually through our relationships, is through safe and engaged relationships. So if you're a parent-child relationship, the best way that you can regulate your child is by really looking at yourself and helping yourself stay regulated, and giving yourself some tools and strategies. If you're the adult in looking for strategies for yourself, they'll be the same ones, right? The other thing is as an adult, do you have somebody you can go to that understands and is able to help remind you of the strategies? I know in my household, we do this all the time. My husband and I do this all the time. Hey, it looks like we just all need to be really quiet for a minute. It's all just too much, right? So we all need these reminders and strategies. So you have somebody that you can go to. If you don't, within a safe and engaged relationship, then we might need to use some more self-monitoring strategies. But ideally, we're using our relationships to stay regulated within our days. And then with the holidays, really bringing on this balance of known versus novelty, right? So we know that routine and structure is important for people on the autism spectrum. I'll argue that routine and structure is important for everybody. And so we want to be able to keep this level of routine and structure. And what helps us have learning and new experiences is novelty. And so what we want to do is really think about how much novelty are we bringing to the holiday and how much of our known are we bringing. And sometimes we have to really adjust that so that we can successfully engage with the holiday experience, right? So an example of this is, known and structure of getting up at the same time every day, eating breakfast at the same time every day, having known activities we do in the middle of the day, and then having the similar bedtime routine, right? That gives us known and structure. Let's say we're traveling for the holidays and we're at grandma's house, right? There's tons of novelty there, right? There's maybe new sounds, there's new smells, there's a lot of people, there's different noises. How can we keep some of our routine and structure within that novelty, right? Or let's say we want to go to a light show, right? One of those drive-through light shows that are very cool. It could be a little overwhelming from a sensory perspective, right? We might want to think about, so that's the novelty, but we might want to think about surrounding that activity with known and structure, right? Maybe prior, we're going to use our sensory tools that we know. And then after, we're going to do something very, very predictable. We're going to have a meal that's predictable. We're going to watch a show that's predictable in order to help our system have that known within the novelty. And so when I think about folks who need some of that consistency, like how can we balance that to create the successful holiday experience? Okay.
Jen, this is Tim, and I haven't really thought about that before, but I think back to, maybe some of the mistakes that I made as a parent of a child on the spectrum, because it's very easy for me to go, oh, let's just pile all this stuff together. Let's go to this light show, and then we're going to go out for this afterwards, and then maybe we'll drive around the neighborhood and we'll see all these lights, and piling on 3, 4 novel, new experiences. And then when we get to the fourth one, wondering why the kid isn't enjoying it anymore.
Right.
And why are they more worn out? This is all exciting to me. So I love that sense of, yes, let's have that wonder. Let's have that novelty, but let's balance that with what's known and balance that with some sort of structure. That's a really cool point that I hadn't thought about before.
Exactly. Yeah. And I even think about when my kids were younger, my kids are not on the spectrum, but both are pretty sensory, unique individuals. And I always had this idea, like, we're going to have these days that are open and the kids can just do their thing and play, right? And in my mind, this was fabulous. In their mind, it created disaster because it was there's lack of structure. It was gone. Even, and so I realized, if we're going to have these down days, I'm actually going to have to provide some structure to them in order to get regulation. And so we didn't have these long periods of time with nothing. We had to mark time in some way. And that's what created joy and regulation, was some sort of structure. Mm-hmm.
And I even think about my life as an adult, looking at the holiday seasons myself, going, oh my gosh, there's people that are going to want to stay up later, and I'm getting used to going to bed early. And okay, how can I sandwich that with some healthy or known experiences, and go ahead and be a little, like, I'll have some days off. Okay, is it, how many days off in a row can I have without anything to do before I sit there and go, I don't know what the heck to do. I should be doing something.
Exactly.
And so having some sort of structure, not planning every minute of the vacation out, every moment, but I love that, having some idea of structure, some things within that mix. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And for our adults, I feel like we have our little routines, right? It might be going to bed at the same time. It might be having our consistent morning coffee, right? It might be I mean, this is the reality of our world. It might be playing a certain game on our phone consistently. Something that can help mark time within all of it, within all of the difference and chaos kind of the excitement of the holidays. We also need that. It's okay to say no and go back to some routine. And so that's where I really want people to have permission to hold on to what makes us feel good already, even though we're doing all these cool things around the holidays. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about some sensory strategies for the holidays. So for our folks who are using sensory strategies, our kids, our adults, and again, I'm going to argue all of us are using sensory strategies throughout our day in order to organize. And again, I'll pull on myself quite a bit here because I use all sorts of sensory strategies. Don't forget those during the holidays, right? That's the first thing, is if you know what's working, don't neglect them for yourself, right? So if you know you need to have quiet some of the time and you're at grandma's house and it's right, you're in the family events. I don't know, my family's very, very loud in a very loving way, but they're very loud and I am very auditorily sensitive. And so I personally get outside at least a couple times a day where I can get quiet. My system needs it, right? So for some of our kids and for some of our adults on the spectrum, the sound might be something we really need to consider for ourselves. Does that mean just popping in headphones with some favorite known music for parts of the day? Maybe, right? Maybe, yeah. I mean, headphones are a very appropriate use, to organizing our auditory systems. Does that mean going in a quiet room and taking a break for a minute? Maybe. So that's something we want to think about. We want to be aware of, I put olfactory, which is our sense of smell. I put that on here because smell is such a big thing around the holidays. There are so many novel smells, right? There's baking, there's cooking, there's like the candles and all of the things. And so for those who are sensitive to smell, again, myself is one, we need to be aware. If we're thinking about a child who maybe doesn't have the language or the understanding yet to know that the smell is, we want to really think about labeling it for them. Like, wow, I just walked in and it smells like whatever, a Christmas cookie. It smells like I can really smell the tree. I can, whatever it is, so that there's some known. Because smell is actually most closely related to our emotional centers, so it can really kick off an emotional reaction for people. So that's something I really like to make sure we're thinking about for everybody. Sensory strategies, tactile. So our touch strategies. The two ways I like to think about our touch, well, there's a couple. There's a couple of things that tend to pop up at the holidays. One is our folks who love tactile strategies and use them. So this might be a child or an adult who uses their pet and petting their pet as an organizer. I know I just got a puppy and I'm noticing for myself, wow, that's really organizing for me. Paying attention to that for yourself. If you're traveling, you might not have your pet with you, but paying attention that that's something that you use for yourself. Is there something else that you can use to replace it? For some of us, having the extra tactile experiences, that baking and cooking, again, for my kids, that was huge. Like my son was in the cookie dough. He still is to this day. He's 16 in the cookie dough. And I just had to learn how to be okay with that because that's what worked for him. So we just had to clean up. So can we give extra tactile experiences, right? Actually, for all of us, this is where using baths and showers is really helpful, right? It's a very functional way of getting tactile input into our systems. The other way we want to think about tactile with the holidays are new tactile experiences that may be uncomfortable for people. So this is going to be, this is going to be clothing that, right? We have to put the special holiday clothing on that's itchy, scratchy, and horrible. This is where we want to think about family members who maybe don't know you as well or know the child as well, coming up and touching you, and finding either somebody to support you or supporting the individual by saying, you know what, let's shake their hand, or let's just wave hi, and instead of forcing touch. So those are the things that I really think about with touch, that we want to be aware of. As far as vision goes, I like to think about organized visual environments, right? So again, how do the individual or any of us typically organize our environment? I know I need a lot of visual organization or I get very dysregulated. So what happens during the holidays? There's paper and then everything looks different in the house, and there's clutter and there's a ton of people, and right. And so again, can we offer a place that's less visually distracting for periods of time to recover, right? Can we go to a quiet bedroom if we're traveling? Can we, this is where again, teenagers and adults are using their screens is maybe not the most functional, but around the holidays, can we watch a show on our screen, which is visually going to be the same every time? Can we do some organizing of something in the environment to help us feel better about ourselves? And then the last one, movement, is really everything. We tend to lose our movement opportunities during this period of time, right? It's cold out. Right, we're not getting our typical daily routines. There's a lot more sitting around. The best thing you can do is get outside. And the reason getting outside is so important is a couple of reasons. We get movement, we get organized visual and auditory, typically. Not every system that's organizing for, but most. If it's a child or an adult, you can get some nice tactile experiences out into the snow, out into the leaves, out picking stuff up and exploring it. That's all tactile. I encourage out on trails, right? So there's different surfaces, there's stumps to come up and down and over. Now you're getting all this input. And then you're also getting, because it's this time of year, you're getting cold, which is the vagus nerve regulator, which is going to regulate your system. So you're getting all of these nice things just by getting outside. And so something I tell every family I work with is if you do nothing else, get outside for 15 minutes during the day, especially in a more natural environment, right? So a park, a trail, something like that. It also gives a nice refuge, right? If you're in an environment that's a lot. And so that's something that is very important from a regulation perspective. Any questions on the sensory stuff? I can answer for you.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but please do feel free to unmute yourself. I will notice that on screen, or put your questions in the chat. I'm more than happy to repeat them for Jen. But we also welcome the interaction, and Jen, I cannot hear the strong suggestion to get outside enough. I tend to, it gets cold and I just want to hunker down.
Right.
I want my blanket army. I want my cocoa. I want to watch the snow out the window as it falls. It just reminds me how cold it is out there.
Exactly.
So that reminder is really important. We all just, Tim, put on your shoes, put on your coat, go out on the deck. Just take some time outside. It doesn't have to be extended. You don't have to be, super active marathon runner in the snow. I'm going to fall onto the ice, blah, blah, blah. Just get outside. That's such a good reminder for me.
Yeah. Yep. And you're right. It does not have to be any more than put your coat on and walk outside. Right. Walk down the driveway, walk around sit outside for 5 minutes, because our bodies need that shift. There's all sorts of research out there about nature as a regulatory effect. And again, in the winter in Wisconsin, this is hard to remember. It has to become routine based. Yeah, for sure. All right, our last set of strategies are going to be our relationship strategies, right? So a lot of these are geared parent to child, but they don't have to be, right? Because relationship strategies, as you become an adult and start to use your own strategies, you either start A, doing this for yourself, or B, doing this with a close relationship partner. So this still might be a parent, it might be a friend, it might be whomever, but these things kind of go back and forth. Everybody needs these, and everybody uses these in order to regulate. Even though it might be the relationship really with yourself, which is kind of a whole nother topic. But we've talked about creating consistency in our routine. This is creating consistency with the relationship, right? So we're knowing that your safe person, your parent, your friend is going to respond the same way every time, right? So during the holiday season, I don't know about you, but a lot of parents get very, very stressed out because they have to do all the things, right? All the things. We're buying gifts and we're setting up play dates and we're making all the things. And so we're not as available then to create the consistency for our kids, right? And so it's something I really like to think about is how do we kind of still create the rhythmic I'm here for you throughout the day, okay? And again, right, built-in routines are a fabulous way of doing this. This is wake up time, bedtime, mealtime, right? Those are the ones that you can easily continue to create that consistency for. Co-regulation, that's a huge topic, but what co-regulation is one person's ability to regulate the other person through their own regulation. So if I'm regulated, I'm going to help you be regulated. If I'm dysregulated, I'm probably going to dysregulate you. So co-regulation is again, it always circles back. The best way to regulate somebody else is to get yourself regulated. Always, 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 always. And so this is where I go to parents and adults and say, all right, so how are we going to help you regulate? What are we going to do to help you be able to regulate yourself? And so this is where all those strategies we just talked about, how are you going to do it for yourself? And organize and provide that for yourself.
And Jen, I'm thinking about some of the adults that I know. I'm thinking about my 23-year-old kid. Is that some of our kiddos, some of our adults, they have had years of this regulation training. I mean, they have been taught and taught and taught. Well, it strikes me that they are in this perfect position to help some of the rest of us who get extremely off kilter around the holidays. Is my son is very observant about when things are different and when I am doing things differently. And he's right here. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
And so he is one that can notice, Dad, you're a little bit stressed about all of this stuff. Maybe you just need to breathe. Yep. So he can remind me why, because he's been practicing this.
Exactly.
And our adults have been practicing these things. And so being able to share them, what they've learned with the rest of us could be really cool.
The perfect example of co-regulation.
Okay. Thanks, bud.
The perfect example is, right, we regulate one person, another person regulates us. It always goes back and forth. And what you just talked about with your son is attunement, right? So we attune to the people we're regulating with. So he's attuning to you and saying, and attunement means like cueing in, right? Right? We all cue into others. Where it gets tricky is when we're cueing in and there's nothing we can do about it. So what we want to do is cue in and then regulate with. And this goes both ways. This goes every which way with all relationships. And so if you have an adult who's been practicing this for a long, long time, that's like the sweet spot, right? So now we're going back and forth. Yep. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. The other relationship strategy that I'm always going to talk about is sharing joy. When are we finding our moments of joy, right? And sometimes they're little and they're brief and and again, there's all sorts of research out there around how just these tiny moments of joy, even if it's within a lot of other chaos, can create new receptors and can create new ways of being. And so, in my practice, I talk about sharing joy a lot, and finding even the most minute ways of doing it, especially if things are feeling a little stressful at the holidays, right? That's one of the things that we sort of sometimes kind of forget, even though that's kind of the way we're like kind of what we're trying to do, but we sometimes forget about like just finding the moment. And the moment of joy can literally be a giggle in the car together. That's good enough, right? It can literally be a little look between two people. It can be sitting down with your kid and playing the video game with them. I mean, that's where I go with my teenagers sometimes. It's like sometimes you just have to sit and play the video game with them or watch the video game because you don't know how to play it. At least I don't know how to play it. Sometimes it's it's sharing nature together. So finding those little tiny moments of joy relationally are incredibly important. And then the last one we've kind of talked about is modeling self-care. Right. And so we talked about regulation, self-care, but modeling, it's so important for us all to model how we care for ourselves. Right. And again, is this sitting on the couch with an animal and just finding happiness there? Is this really sitting down and enjoying your morning coffee? Is this saying you're tired and going to bed? Right? There's all of these things that are modeling like I'm caring for myself, and this is important, especially during the holidays. And so that's the other one that I really like to think about. And again, this is for everybody. These are parents, children, adults, everybody modeling self-care, because that's how we then are able to relationally stay connected and together. Okay. So I saved a little bit of time for questions. I'm not sure if there's questions. I'm going to stop sharing screen, but I know that people are going to be rushed for time, and I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity for questions or something I didn't go over well throughout.
We do have a comment in the chat. Just wonderful presentation, and I agree with that. It's to me. So I would welcome like any questions and anything people have about like, what does this look like for me? Like okay, these are great concepts, but sometimes it can be hard to apply the concepts in my life. So it could be like, okay, I really like to just sit around inside and I don't like to go outside until March. Do you have any other ideas to help me get outside? Or I go into places and the smell of candles are just so overwhelming. And for some reason, people like to have different smells going at the same time, which I don't understand. I'm like, what? Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
So if you have any of those questions, that, personally or somebody has run into, now's a great time to go ahead and ask.
Mm-hmm.
We do have any strategies with all the new foods and trying them, especially when you're at someone else's house. Oh my gosh. Back in the day, you will try Aunt Mary's spinach casserole. No, I will not try Aunt Mary's spinach casserole. It's gross. So any idea about how to work with that?
I'm so glad you brought this one up. It's going to be individual to everybody, obviously. And in the context of a holiday season where there's so much change anyway, my perspective is if we're going to have an expectation of new food, we need to prep the person who's being expected to try and the person who's expecting way ahead of time. B, do we need to have an expectation of trying a new food at the holiday? This is one of those routine-based things that I tend to encourage parents to do. Make sure that there's known foods at the holiday events. Food is such a tricky one to begin with for so many people that I get leery of asking new foods on top of everything else, because now you're talking about hunger, right? And if all we can eat is the new food and now we're not eating and now we're hungry because we didn't eat the food, now we're really going to be dysregulated. And so, right, I get that families are tricky sometimes with expectations. And so if there needs to be an expectation around trying something new, make it as much of a known as you can, but please make sure that there's known foods available. Mm-hmm.
And do you have any suggestions based on your experience about if I want to try a new food, let's say I'm somewhere and that looks really interesting, but I'm not really a food risk taker. Mm-hmm. Do you have any ideas about how I might be able to work up to try that really delicious looking thing that I'm really scared of?
Yeah, I feel like when we've worked on those things, honoring the interest without creating an external expectation, right? So we're honoring the interest, and we're honoring the individual's ability to make their own decision of how, when, how much, if it gets smelled, if it gets licked, if it gets tasted, if it gets put in their mouth and spit out, right? Without the expectation and without making it sort of an event, especially when we're at a holiday event. So there's enough other stuff going on. And so if somebody's really interested in trying, go for it. That sounds amazing. And then just honor what they've done. I think is the fairest, the most respectful way of doing it.
Oh, I love that suggestion because so often I see, it becomes an event.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, everybody's got to try this. And it's just like, okay, I'm not ready to swallow that yet. Maybe can I smell it right now? And maybe then just, everybody go do something, and I'm going to sit in the corner. I'm going to look at it for a bit, and then maybe I'll just taste it a little.
Fabulous.
And if I like it, yeah, I'm starting to pop those things.
Yes.
But I really like that suggestion.
Yeah, I think that we need to be respectful of the individual's sensory experience around it.
And realizing that sometimes, we all have different ways of telling us something is hot or cold.
Yes.
There's not one temperature that fits everybody.
Exactly.
And so understanding that, what do you mean this is cold? This is just, no, it's cold to me. And that's what matters, is it's hot to me.
Yep.
And that's what matters, is honoring each other's perceptions of the sensation.
Exactly. Yep. We need to honor, and that's really what attunement is about. Like, is I see what's happening for your body, which might be different than me, but I see what's happening for you, and that's real and authentic in your body, and that's reasonable, and that's where we're going to start. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Any other questions, comments? Some more thanks. Oh, we have kitties coming on screen. Yay, cats.
Love kitties.
Yes. And so I'd let my dog be on screen, but he's a little heavy to be in my lap. Wants to be there, but still a little bit heavy for me. All right. Well, Jen, I will release you to your second half of your lunch hour. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Joining us today. Absolutely. And Lauren, thank you for being here. Everybody, thank you so much for being here.
For coming.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Been a great day. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.